Today, we're diving into the 2020 NBA draft with Mike Gribanov of the Stepien. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
And welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. We did the mock draft yesterday. I told you guys would hate it. Plenty of you guys hate it. Worst mock draft ever. You don't know anything about basketball. Cool. That's great. Fantastic. All I did was give my opinions on these players because, as we know, consensus top fives, actual draft top fives, don't actually equal the best top 5 or top 10 players in a draft. So I was just giving a different perspective in that mock draft. But hey, you hated it, and I thought you would. But what we're going to do now, over the course of this time, a few more mock drafts coming as well, is talk to NBA draft analysts, wide variety of different people, talking about different players, getting some takes on who they are higher on than consensus, who they are lower on than consensus, and a couple of other things sprinkled in there as well. And we're going to kick things off today by talking with Mike Gribanov of the Stepien. So let's bring Mike in right now. All right, let's bring in Mike now. Mike, welcome to the show for the first time.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. I always enjoy doing these podcasts.
So, Mike, if for people who don't know you, just a bit of a brief introduction of what you do around the NBA draft.
Right now I'm just doing like general scouting, like mostly tweeting, to be honest. But yeah, I'm working on some projects behind the scenes right now that I can't discuss yet. But yeah.
Hey, mysterious stuff. We love mysterious stuff, Mike. So let's talk about these guys. So what we're going to do is going to bring a whole bunch of draft analysts on over the next couple of weeks. Talk to them about players that they are higher on than the general consensus, players that they are lower on than the general consensus, and a couple other things sprinkled in there as well. We'll start with one of the guys that you are the highest on, and a name that you brought up to me was CJ Elleby from Washington State. What can you tell us about CJ? He wasn't someone I'd scouted really thoroughly before you brought him up, but I've dug into it a little bit. A guy that averaged almost 18.5 points per game, almost 2 steals, pretty strong shooter. Why are you higher on CJ than what the consensus may be?
Well, just having the 6'6" size at the like 2-3 combo position, and having the all-around game that he has, he's able to get to the rim. He's a pretty good shooter, at least off the catch. Really improved on on the defensive end this year compared to last year. Last year had some struggles, but this year much improved. Very young still as a sophomore, younger, than a lot of the freshmen in this class. So just, that ability to do a lot of things fairly well. And I think got a little bit overlooked maybe at that Washington State team that wasn't very good this year, well, the last few years. So not a lot of people really paying attention. But I thought he played quite well this year and took another step forward. So, yeah.
I think when I look at him, there's a couple of things that stand out. Obviously, it's some of the shooting stuff, like he almost attempted 7 threes a game. Now, the percentage went down from his freshman year. He was a 41% shooter as a freshman. He still played 31 minutes a night as a freshman, so still a pretty big part of things. But it went down to 34% this year. But intriguingly, his free throw percentage went from 66 to 82%. And those two things seem to be in opposition to each other. Why do you think his three-point percentage went down? Was it just that larger role, more difficult shots that he was taking? And how do we pass that with that significant improvement in free throw shooting?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure there's like a big takeaway I have on why that happened. I think it's just mostly just, the luck of the draws, they say. I think the best way to look at it is shooting numbers, like you said, like the free throw is going up, the three-point is going down. So I kind of take the average of the two from both years he played at Washington State. I think he, like I said, he made some improvements, particularly on the defensive end, but I don't think his shooting really improved, or I wouldn't say got worse since his freshman year. So I think the combination of both seasons kind of paints the best picture percentage-wise for his shooting overall.
How do we look at him in terms of positional fit in the NBA? He's 6'6". He played more of the 3, I guess, in college. 6'6", does he have enough size to guard, the top level wings or just wings in general in the NBA? Or is he going to be more pushed down to the 2, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That like that's definitely one of the concerns I have for him. He even played a lot of four, especially in his freshman year for Washington State, and maybe even some small ball five. So yeah, I think moving down a position, he'll probably play like the two next year or in his NBA career in general. So yeah, that's a bit of a concern for him for sure. But considering all the other stuff, obviously I'm not saying he's a perfect prospect, but yeah, I don't think he's going to be able to guard maybe some of the really bigger wings, but he's pretty strong. He has a pretty good frame. I think he'll be able to handle himself well enough. Maybe some of the really quicker guys, or like you said, some of the bigger guys, he may have a little bit of struggles with, but I don't think it's going to be a big issue.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing because we have these players who come in as 3 and D types, but sometimes size can be a problem. But I think more importantly is strength there. So he's not someone that we're considering to be at a massive strength disadvantage if he does have to play the 3 and guard those bigger wings.
Yeah. I think strength is a big part of kind of who he is as a player, and being able to get to the rim and kind of finish over guys with power. He had some struggles finishing as far as like touch and stuff in the half court. But I don't think in the NBA he's going to be asked to really create for himself a huge amount. I think he's going to be more of a guy who could fill in like as a 3 and D type, and maybe a secondary playmaking type of stuff. But yeah, I think strength is a kind of physical strength is for lack of a better word, a strength for him.
Now, when you say that you're higher on him than consensus, where do you think that he is sort of positioned? Is he a mid-second rounder, an early second, a late first? Like, where is he on your draft board?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know where he's going to get taken. I think I looked it up, and the ESPN had him like something like 90th on their board. So I'm definitely far higher than that on him. I think I'd probably be willing to take him, if I was in charge of the team, even like the late first, but probably wait a little bit longer since he's unlikely to be picked by other teams. In the mid second, he'd definitely make a very good selection in this draft.
Yeah, I think I saw him on CBS at about 55, 56. Sometimes he's at 70 in some places. So he's one of those, at this point, according to those sources, fringe second round guys, or fringe back end second round undrafted type players. But there is appeal in having a guy that showed some volume scoring ability, some shooting ability, some defensive ability at that position as well. So he's an interesting guy to have a look at. The other guy that you brought up as someone that you are higher on versus consensus is Jalen Harris out of Nevada. A 22-year-old 6'5" guard. He averaged almost 22 points per game this season. He had a really strong PIPM as well, over 4 for Nevada. A guy that was a transfer, so an older player. Not someone, again, like Elleby, that I really looked at. I didn't even have him in my latest mock draft that I did yesterday. So convince me on why Jalen Harris is a guy that you're big on here.
Yeah, I think Harris is just one of the more talented individual scorers in the class. I think he's able to score at all 3 levels. And I think something he maybe is really underrated for him in particular is his ability to finish in the half court. He's really explosive in half court situations, quickly rising off 1 or 2 feet and finishing at the rim. I think that's kind of a rare skill that sometimes gets overlooked in ability for guys to translate to the NBA. And I think that gives him some offensive upside. The guy that I kind of thought of, there's some substantial differences between these two, but I think it's kind of like a statistical upside outcome for Jalen Harris is like a CJ McCollum type, guy who maybe got overlooked at the college level due to playing for a mid-major, but I think his ability to score really gives him some interesting upside relative to some of the other prospects that are generally in his range.
So in his last season, his junior year, he averaged almost 22 points. He shot 36% on 3 on over 6 attempts per game. Got to the line almost 5.5 times per game. Interesting is the passing. He averaged almost 4 assists. So is he, like you mentioned the CJ McCollum, is he more of that combo guard sort of guy who can handle point guard roles in a pinch, or is he going to be more of just an off guard in the NBA?
Well, he has the handling, and just from the attention he was able to draw, I think he was able to kind of create for teammates at times, but I don't think that's a big strength for him, and I think sometimes shot selection could be an issue. Again, I'm not claiming these guys are perfect prospects by any stretch, but, just as far as like maybe in the pinch, he could probably do like an off-ball point guard type. He could, I think, guard most point guards well enough. He's, like I said, a fairly athletic, very strong player. has very good lower body mechanics as far as movement and stuff. So good feet. So yeah, I think he could do it in the pinch, but I would prefer to have him as more of like a energy scorer type. I think that's his ideal role.
He's another one of those guys that you're down in the consensus rankings is pretty low, like or not even appearing in some spots. So you're looking at him as like a second round sort of a player, maybe in that early second round, mid second round. Or where would you be having Harris? I heard a podcast yesterday where someone suggested that he could actually be a lottery pick. That seems pretty wild to me. But people have some high opinions on him, and others that just don't seem to value him at all. So where are you at with him in terms of draft value?
Yeah, there is more of a kind of range of outcomes people have for him. It feels like I think I'd have him around the same spot as Elleby. I think if I'm looking to anticipate a redraft for 10 years from now, I'd probably have him in the in the top 30 of this class. But realistically, I don't think he'll probably get picked in the first round. So maybe early in the mid second round, I think he would make for a great pick. I think one thing I want to kind of quickly highlight with him also is he was, I believe, the best isolation scorer according to Synergy Sports in the country last year. Once you look at guys with a certain number of possessions, I believe maybe 40 possessions in total or something like that. So it really shows you how talented he is as an individual scorer. And considering he shot over like 85% from the free throw line over his career, his 3-point percentage is amazing. But considering the type of shots he had to take and stuff like that, I think there's definitely some really impressive scoring upside there that is the reason why I think he warrants more of a look than maybe his average spot on mocks.
Yeah, his free throw shooting at 84% across his college career on over 4 attempts per game. That's really impressive, as well as a 36% three-point shooting. I always have concern with guys who really only start turning it on in really their fourth year in college, which is what this was, after a couple of years at Louisiana Tech, and then sat out a year to transfer. So I get a little bit concerned about that. Is there much growth in his game, considering he is already 22?
Well, he's made considerable improvements so far. I mean, it is true that sometimes guys are able to kind of dominate as they get older and kind of physically outgrow opponents. I think there's a little bit of that. But when you look at him compared to a guy like, say, Grant Riller, who's over a year older than Harris and, considered much higher by many people on boards and mock drafts, and played in probably one of the worst defensive conferences in the entire country, and really kind of struggled to score and to be efficient against better competition until this year. In previous years, Roller, that is. I think Harris is a superior prospect than him, and again, Roller is considered much higher, like kind of in the consensus.
Yeah, I'm going to have a look at those two and compare them, because I do have really higher than Harris. I'm going to have a look at that over the next couple of weeks and really dig into that. But let's look at things that aren't quite so rosy, in your opinion, Mike. And the first guy we want to talk about, players that you're lower on, is Anthony Edwards. And I did a mock draft yesterday. I had him going at number 6. People didn't really like that one. He is, of course, a shooting guard out of Georgia, 6'5", 19 years of age. The shooting, a concern for him, just 29% three-point shooting. In terms of me having him at number 6 yesterday, is that higher or lower than where you are valuing him?
I think I have him even a little bit lower, but just about there. That's about right for me. But obviously the consensus on him is, many people have him number 1, and I think most on average would be like a top 2, top 3 pick, something like that. So yeah, I'm considerably lower on him.
What's your major concern? I'll highlight what my issues were. And someone had some issues with what I said yesterday, rightfully so. Talking about I was high on Killian Hayes and I was down on Edwards. I said, well, both guys have poor shooting numbers, but my difference there is I think the shot selection stuff with Edwards is more of the concern rather than the shot not going in. The fact that his passing is not great, his defense, he can get a little bit lazy there, and a lot of his stuff tend to be just overpowering guys with elite athleticism, which I don't think translates for him that well to the NBA. Is that sort of what your concern is? Is it an IQ shot selection and the way that he was able to score in college versus how that translates to the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, less the latter. I think his athleticism is I don't think that's a big deal. I mean, I guess I understand what you're saying. Being considerably more athletic at the college level, sometimes that doesn't translate as well to the NBA. That is true to some extent. But mostly just the decision making and shot selection and his awareness, these a statistic I invented in particular for Edwards. I talked about this on my YouTube channel, but you know, plus 40 shots that if you add up the seconds left on the shot clock and the amount of feet away from the basket, they go over 40. So like say there's 22 seconds on the shot clock and 22-foot shot that he takes. That's a 44 over 40 shot. Those types of, early shot clock, long range shots is like a big thing for Edwards, and something he does way too often. And people often will say that as a younger player he'll be able to improve on that, but in my experience I found, especially for guards, for front court players it's less of a concern, but for guards that has not been something so easy to improve upon when your decision making and your approach to the game and your feel for the game is such a huge problem for you even at the college level. I kind of felt this with guys going back to like Emmanuel Mudiay, Dennis Smith Jr., Darius Garland last year. I've had a pretty decent track record of calling these guard busts. So I think I've kind of worried the same is true of Edwards this year.
Yeah, one of my concerns also with him is that he does require the ball in his hands a lot, and having him as an off-ball player probably isn't it where he's going to get the best result, yet his decision-making and passing, probably you don't want the ball in his hands, so where does he fit in an NBA team? Do you agree that his best role is with the ball in his hands, and the best outcome for an NBA team is to not have the ball in his hands?
Yes, especially, if you're taking them in the top 2 or 3, I would presume that high in the draft, you want the upside that comes with being a primary sort of initiator. You'll be able to get better value with him off ball, but then is that top 3 value? This is not the best draft class, but I still would say probably not. So, I would also agree that just as player himself right now, like spotting up his jump shots, he kind of has some issues with his rhythm as a jump shooter on spot ups, and it doesn't look nearly as comfortable and fluid on his shot release when he's shooting off the catch and off the 1-2 and stuff like that, as opposed to off the dribble and pull up self-created jump shots.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Edwards and what team he goes to. I think it's going to be super important, but it's safe to say that people know that I'm a little bit down on him as well. And thank you, Mike, for your thoughts on him. But the other guy that you are more down on than consensus, which I'm not sure I'm I'm not really that down on him, but Leandro Bolmaro, the Argentinian from Barcelona, he's tall. He's 20 years of age. He's 6'7". He can't shoot really at all. I think that's a pretty big concern. Was at 29% from 3 last year. In the 10 games or so that he's played this year, he's at an unbelievable 9% from 3 and just 22% overall from the field. Bolmaro in most places is looked at as a pick between the 20 and 30 spot in the first round. I think that's where I had him in my mock draft as well. Why are you out on Bolmaro?
I think people like watch Bolmaro and he has these, moments of creativity as a playmaker and some beautiful passes. But I think he has some of the same issues as Edwards. They're just kind of overshadowed by him. First of all, having those pretty passes that he throws sometimes, and also being an international player, there's kind of some kind of what is it called, like a stereotype of international players that they're supposed to be, more advanced as far as their feel for the game, stuff like that, which isn't obviously necessarily true. And I think Bolmaro just plays way too out of control, doesn't really understand how to get to spots, doesn't have a great feel for approaching offensive possessions and attacking off the dribble. And that leads to a huge number of turnovers, a lot of poor shot attempts, unnecessary shot attempts, and inefficient plays. And I think people kind of, like you said, he's not a great shooter. So people kind of, the reason people like him is because they hope that there's some upside in the future where he could be like a offensive creator and stuff like that. But I don't really see that with his approach to game mentally and his feel for the game.
Do you think there's any hope for the shooting? He was a 71% free throw shooter last year across 24 games in all competitions. He hasn't missed a free throw so far in his 10 games this year, but of course that's pretty limited attempt numbers. Is there hope for him for that shooting to develop, or is he just busted in terms of his form?
Well, I think there's definitely hope, but if you're trying to draft a shooter, I don't think you would take Bolmaro.
So what is his role on an NBA team? Is it because he's tall, he's 6'7", he's like is he a forward? Is he a Kyle Anderson type of wing creator type player? What's his defense like?
I think the comparison I think people would have is like a Tomas Satoransky type, like taller point guard. But I think Satoransky, like I said, has a much better feel for the game, and at least on the offensive end. I think Bolmaro has some upside maybe defensively because he is pretty active, has pretty good hands, and good at getting the passing lane, active in the passing lanes, and poking the ball away, like has high steal numbers. So I think there's a little bit of upside in that sense. But considering his lack of strength, I think he's a decent athlete. I don't think he's like a particularly outstanding one for an NBA guard. So yeah, I think that would be kind of like a 3-and-D tall point guard, I guess. But I'm not particularly excited about Bolmaro's prospects to fulfill that at the NBA level, at least if you're trying to bring a lot of value to your team.
Do you think he would come over for next season, or he would stay with Barcelona for a little bit more time?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I think he might come over for next season. He is already playing with them now, but I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
A lot of the time when players get drafted in the NBA, Barcelona just buries them. It happens with happened with Rodion's Kurucs. They just buried him. And they said, well, you're not here for the long term, so we're just not going to play you. So is there some of that, do you think, with the low minutes for Bolmaro, that they've just said, well, you aren't a long-term option for us, so therefore we're not going to be really active in developing you?
That's a possibility. There's like kind of two sides to that coin, because I was pretty low on Kurucs, and while he hasn't had like a superstar career so far or anything, but he's been a fairly successful NBA player. So I think I kind of whiffed on that one with him. So that kind of gives me a little bit of concern with Bolmaro. But I watched Bolmaro in multiple contexts, not just with Barcelona's senior team, with their junior team, with the Argentinian FIBA teams. So I've seen quite a bit of him, and I do think that that experience that people had with Kurucs and how he was such a sleeper is kind of aiding a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people in their reasons for being high on Bolmaro. They kind of think, oh, here's another Barcelona guy that's kind of being overlooked. We're not going to miss this time.
Yeah, it's absolutely something to pay
Obviously,
attention.
every player is their own individual.
Yeah, sorry, Mike, you cut out there, but that's all right. We'll get into the next couple of guys. These aren't guys that you're particularly higher or lower on. They're just players because I want to cover most of these prospects here across the coming weeks. And the guy we're going to talk about now is Cole Anthony, who, coming out of high school was highly regarded, but now it appears he's got a real chance of dropping out of the lottery. A 6'3" point guard, played for North Carolina last season, averaged almost 19 points per game and 4 assists. My concerns with him as a player are the creation stuff. I'm not sure he can be a guy that leads an offense. Some of the shooting concerns with him, I think, is a lot to do with the team that he was surrounded by. But why is Anthony, in your opinion, seemingly dropping at the moment, down from a guy that was considered a top 10 pick, probably at worst before the season started, and now maybe he's getting out to 15 to 20 type range?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt he had a really difficult season in North Carolina, and I think a lot of people, he was an older freshman this year, and people kind of think that he's peaked, quote unquote, early, and his physical development, and obviously he's a son of a former NBA player, had a lot of high level training and coaching and stuff like that. So people kind of feel like there's not much upside there, and with the difficult season he's had, that's kind of obviously really hurt his stock.
So where do you view him? Do you see the shooting coming up? Because he shot 38% from the field last year, which is obviously horrible. 35% from three is a strong number, but he just was forced into taking a lot of bad shots. Is that a correctable thing for him? Can he improve the passing? What's his vision like? Is he a player that you'd want to entrust to be a starting point guard on an NBA team?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher on him than consensus. I do think that North Carolina was just a horrible kind of context setting for him as far as spacing and ability to get to the rim. And like you said, definitely really hurt his efficiency. I think some of the concerns are legitimate, like him being 6'2", not particularly long. Some of the ability to dominate physically at the high school level at the rim, just kind of bully guys and stuff like that. You saw him lose that at the college level. But I think also something worth noting with him, I usually don't like to look at this too much because people often exaggerate the impact of injuries. Like everybody has some type of injury while they're playing and stuff like that. But I honestly do feel like Anthony last year was hurt by injuries. He obviously had some ankle issue early in the year, and then he had to work on that, and he was out for like a month. And then he came back, and he was looked a little bit better athletically, but still had some troubles. I do think some of the playmaking concerns are legitimate. Like his turnover numbers have been consistently very high going back to his like high school and AAU career. So there's definitely some concerns with like decision making over dribbling and not always knowing when to pass, when to shoot, kind of deciding what the play is going to be before actually letting the play develop and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not saying he's again not a perfect prospect by any stretch, and I've definitely dropped on him a lot since the start of the year. But I do think it's been kind of a really worst case scenario year for him, and I don't think it's fair to hold all of it against him.
The last guy we're going to talk about today is Tyler Bay from Colorado, a 6'7" forward. He's 22 years of age. He put up some pretty strong numbers here for Colorado, averaging 13 or almost 14 points per game with 9 boards, 1.2 blocks, and 1.6 steals. A junior who shot 42% from 3 on really low volume. A guy that I see talked about quite a bit in terms of, really like Tyler Bay, his stretch 4 ability. I'm not sure with him at this point. The low 3-point volume is a little bit worrisome. Yes, those numbers are great, but he shot 23% the year before. So which one of those is real? And is he a bit too small to play at the 4? Is he a bit too slow to play at the 3? Like, where does he fit into you?
Yeah, I think he has the athleticism to play at the 3 potentially, but I think the problem would be just his skill level. Like you said, I don't really trust the shooting right now. I mean, he has, I believe, a career like 74% free throw shooting, so there's some hope for development, and I do think he'll get better over his career. But his handling is not great either, and stuff like that. So yeah, I think there's some concerns with that. His decision making prior to this year was really questionable on both ends, even defensively. And I think that's where on the defensive end is where people really expect a lot of value from him in the future. But when you look again this year compared to his first 2 years of Colorado, his steal percentage almost doubled. And you wonder if some of that is kind of luck and coincidence and stuff like that. If he'll be able to continue to replicate that and play at that level as far as being a defensive event creator and kind of disruptor defensively, or if some of the stuff we saw him as a freshman and sophomore is more true to his abilities. A little bit older for a junior as well. He's actually older than Jalen Harris, for example. So I'm not super high on him, but I understand some of the hope as far as upside, because he is such a great athlete, and he was very disruptive defensively this year.
He's going to be 23 in February. So, he's 22 now. Like, he's going to be 23 almost pretty much the beginning of next season. So, yeah, a little bit older as a prospect there. And you mentioned the assist-to-turnover numbers. Like, they are horrible. He was at 0.61 assist-to-turnover ratio, and that was actually double where he was as a sophomore. So, taking care of the ball versus generating looks for his teammates is a real concern. Not that you want him doing that, but you'd at least hope you could get that assist-to-turnover ratio somewhat higher than a 0.6, which is really extraordinarily low. Again, like so many players who come out as weird prospects, it's like his best position is going to be probably at the 4, but is he too small for that? And just always sort of finding themselves in between. Do you think that he is a first-round player?
No, I don't have him in the first round right now, but he's right outside probably. But yeah, like early second, probably something like that.
Yeah, I had him yesterday in my mock draft at pick 31, so basically right outside the first round at the beginning of the second round. So that's those 6 guys covered for us here. Mike, thank you for talking about those players. Let everyone know where they can find you on Twitter, and I can give your YouTube channel a plug as well. I'll drop the link to that in the description below.
Yeah, I don't even know the name of my YouTube channel. I think it's just Mike Gribanov. But yeah, thanks for the plug. You can find me at Mike Grib, GRIB8, number 8, Mike Grib 8 on Twitter. Yeah, just follow me, and I tweet about the draft and youth basketball mostly, not so much about NBA, but like all types of youth basketball. I will.
So go follow Mike over there. You can check out his stuff. Thank you for kicking off this series of NBA draft analysts here on the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this quick little appearance.
All right, that will be close to doing it here for us today. But yeah, just quickly, for those of you watching on the YouTube video, yes, the graphic here I've got of Tyler Bay, I've got the wrong numbers there. They're Cole Anthony's stats. His power forward and his age and height are still the same, but they're Cole Anthony's numbers down there that I did have for Tyler Bay. So apologies for that. Mike, was great to have on, talk about those 6 players. Tomorrow, we've got another guest on. We're going to cover another 6 players in the NBA draft. Let me know what you thought, what your opinions are on Mike's takes on Jalen Harris and Anthony Edwards and Bolmaro and Cole Anthony and all those guys. Drop it in the comments. Tweet it at me at redrock_bball. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.